Fan Bai is one of my very favorite people to talk to in e-commerce. Great dude who is the CEO of the Hedgehog Company. And Fan does a few things with e-commerce businesses. He advises on distressed businesses. He buys businesses and puts a management team in place to help run them. He's doing consulting in different ways. He's also got his own podcast where he's talking to different people all the time. And what that means is that he's one of those people with perspective across the entire e-commerce industry all the time. He's just constantly looking at different e-commerce businesses. So this conversation is very much like a lot of my conversations with Fan, where we're talking about sort of the broad state of e-commerce. And it really goes in two steps in this conversation. First is, what do bad businesses look like? When Fan is looking at distressed businesses, what went wrong? This can serve as a cautionary tale for you so you can know what problems to avoid and maybe the problems you're in right now related to debt and CAC and OPEX and everything else. And then secondly, when he's looking at great businesses and seeing people crush in their e-commerce businesses, what went right? How come they were able to be successful, and how can you engineer it in the same way? I loved this conversation, loved it a lot. I think if you can get some of this stuff into your head, it'll really help you think through what you're doing with your business right now. Let's get into it with Fan Bai from the Hedgehog Company. Fan, you have helped a dozen, 10, 15 broken businesses in the last year and a half. Is that right? E-commerce brands. You're just living in a sea of crappy financial situations. Is that, am I understanding correctly what you've been spending your time on?
Yeah. Look, I think over the last 5 years, we've been getting calls where it's, hey, we have 3 weeks or we have 3 months of cash left. We've exhausted all capital markets options. We're broken covenants or in default with our senior lender. We're starting to get demand letters from our vendors. Heard that you're a guy that sees this and like has some best practices. What should we do? And originally it was buying these and turning them around, which we're still doing. And but about 18 months ago, we started providing restructuring services to support these situations. And just a whole bunch of learnings, digging into, that many businesses.
This is like a education in how brands go wrong. Then you've got this particular perspective of like how it goes badly for Shopify brands. And anybody watching or listening to this, you probably don't want to think about it, but it's exactly the kind of thing you should be thinking about if you're running a company. Which is like, how does it go badly when it goes badly? As it happens, I have also spoken to a few brands in the last probably 6 months that have had some crazy debt situations for a mix of reasons. Sometimes they've done things wrong. Sometimes there's been fraud in the business where somebody has done something to them. But I've also seen some crazy situations in the last 6 months or so. And for at least 2 of them, they solved it before it got too late. Getting some education on bad business. Let me ask you a question first. So about how big are these businesses on average that you're looking at?
Probably 10 to 20 million in revenue.
Okay, so low 8 figures. Is there, I mean, this is an unfair question because I'm sure there's a lot of mistakes. Is there one core mistake that you see them make over and over again that is like, this is the thing?
Efficiency declined and never improved again. And they kept fixed costs the same for too long.
Efficiency in their ad account?
Yeah. Or retention.
Oh, interesting. So they like didn't realize the LTV that they previously realized, or they just over forecasted their LTV?
LTV started to decline. Said another way, retention started to decrease. Maybe there was more competitors. Maybe they were on the wrong side of trend. So something either happened with retention or their ad efficiency decreased. And so MER went the wrong way, but kept fixed costs the same.
Yeah.
So it went from either break even to unprofitable or slightly profitable to break even. So now you've got a working capital problem. How do you finance working capital as a increasingly inefficient, potentially declining business? You get expensive debt. That only accelerates the problem if you don't fix it quickly, which is hard to fix. And so begins the death march.
I am so sympathetic to this. This is basically what I started to do at 4x400 for exactly that reason. Like just, and when I think back to my time when I was there, we only, I think, took out one MCA loan and paid it back. But when I think about when I was there, and this is a while ago now at this point, 4 or 5 years ago. But I think the reason that it happened for me is that I really didn't understand what made the businesses work. Like I did not understand what my CAC targets should be. I did not understand how much OpEx I should have in the business. So I basically was flying without any kind of core model financially for like how an e-commerce business ought to look. And part of the reason I'm optimistic still about e-commerce, despite stories like the ones you're telling, is that at least for me, as somebody who's spinning up a brand right now on the side, I understand exactly what I think the P&L ought to look like as a level of percentages and things like that. But when I was in that world where I was making those same exact decisions you're describing, for which, again, I'm just nothing but empathetic towards those founders and stuff, I didn't have vision for, it's like I just couldn't see what I couldn't see. Do you think that is what is happening for these brands? They don't actually have a sort of mental model for what an e-commerce business ought to look like. Asked another way, should you and I just be making constant content about like, here is what your P&L must look like, and if it does not look like this, you need to cut costs now?
I think you and I have already done 2 podcasts on this, one on each other's podcast.
Well, there's still all these businesses showing up. Maybe we need to keep doing it. Nobody watches those. They only want to hear me talk about bid caps. So,
almost everyone today has a better mental model of what a P&L should look like versus
that's
3 years ago or 5 years ago, because there's so much more content. I think thanks to us, really. Let's be fair.
Yeah.
But it may just not be precise enough, or maybe off by enough points. And then it's just so easy to let it slide. It's like, okay, I know that like, hey, I should be targeting this contribution margin or this EBIT margin or this gross margin, but like, hey, I'm off by 7% here, 5% there, but I'm going to get to that.
Yeah.
And that just never happens.
Yeah. I understand that too.
I'd say there's 50% of, there's a good amount that looks like that. And that happens year 2, year 3, year 4. It happens for long enough that the business starts to get more stressed. That's like you're an unhealthy person that's getting kind of increasingly unhealthy.
Yeah.
Or it's to what I said earlier, that you started actually okay, but then something in your business economically changed and you weren't able to get back.
So what do you do when you go help these businesses? Like, what do you start? Do you just have to come in and be the person who tells them the hard? Is this like, one of those shows where like Marcus Lemonis, is that what it was called? The Prophet? Yeah. Or like Restaurant Impossible. I think that's the other, where it's like, are you just that guy? Do you just come in and be like, hey, you have to stop right now? Do you, like, is that what your job is?
There's definitely an element of that. I would say that like, to be very clear, we're really manufacturing kind of soft landings more than kind of doing a complete turnaround and hitting it out at the park.
Yeah.
And look, I wish that I was good enough to do that, but in reality, these situations are challenging enough, not only from a financial standpoint, but like I said, kind of the ad efficiency isn't working. The customer love has fallen a little bit, and that's really hard for us to get back, and especially in the tight time window. So often our main objective is to usually sell the business, and for it to kind of satisfy as much of the financial obligation as possible, and that the founder gets 2 things. One, they get to sell the business, get a win, be an exited founder, and the second is that they're not holding any bags at the end of it, which can obviously be quite a challenging situation.
How do you sell a business that distressed, like that's coming to you in desperation like that? Like, how in the world do you accomplish that?
I'd answer that question in a couple of ways. One, there were various restructuring mechanisms. The most commonly known one is a Chapter 11 bankruptcy, but almost none of our businesses get to that. You can do an assignment for benefit of creditors. There's something called an Article 9 friendly foreclosure. There are ways to clean up the balance sheet so that it is sellable. And so that's the kind of legal restructuring framework. And so often, someone might see a business and be like, oh, this is an okay business, I would be interested, but with $10 million of debt, like I can't get into this. Well, there's a way to clean up that $10 million of debt and make it into $1 million of debt, just using an illustrative example.
Yeah.
And then on the income statement, so that's on the balance sheet, and then the income statement side, kind of have to sometimes do a cleanup or be able to tell enough of a story that says, hey, Andrew, I've got this business. Today it's losing $1 million, but it's actually got $2 million of contribution margin, and potentially more contribution margin if you believe some of these kind of efficiency gains. The business is just overloaded with OpEx. You can cut all of that out. You don't need to be paying a agency $50,000 a month you can run that yourself. You don't need to be paying the CMO who's hired the agency $250,000 a month. So you can start to tell the story and kind of come up with ultimately the number that everyone in my industry hates, which is the adjusted EBITDA number, and find a buyer that way.
E-commerce brands from launch up through 9 figures plus and everything in between are using RICHPANEL for their customer service help desk software, including multiple of my clients who use and love RICHPANEL. And that's because it's a great piece of software at a much better price than most of their competitors. So just baseline, RICHPANEL guarantees that you will save 30% on your customer service software bill if you switch to them from Gorgeous or Zendesk. They also see an average of a 30% reduction in tickets. That is an awesome combo. It means that you are not only paying less for the software, but you're paying less to then service the customer service tickets themselves. It also means customers are finding answers to their questions faster and getting their questions answered faster, because that's what a reduction in tickets basically means. So RICHPANEL is able to do that because they are built AI first from the ground up. If there's any part of your business where AI can and should very quickly make a major impact in your business, it is on the software side of things where AI can just be a huge help and can be a huge help in getting customers answers to their questions quickly. You should be looking into it. On top of that, RICHPANEL is also very fast and easy to transition to. They have a guarantee where they can get your team transitioned onto a new product, onto RICHPANEL from your old software in 2 weeks or less. They know you don't have time to waste on this. Listen, we're going into 2026. We're going into the new year here. It is a great time to be thinking about shaving software costs, shaving OpEx, and creating a better experience for your customers as you look towards next year. You're getting out of the insanity of holiday. It's time to create a better service next year, get your team going, and have them rocking and ready to go with RICHPANEL next year. Go to richpanel.com to get started with it today. richpanel.com. We'll follow the link in the show notes. Check it out for yourself. Okay, so I'll tell you exactly what my mind does when you tell that story. It says, I would be better at this than those operators. The operator is the problem. The business is not the problem. It's the operator that's the problem. I mean, I like salivate at a little bit at the business that you're describing there, the hypothetical business you're describing. Like, I should go buy that business and run it, Seeing what you see now, and looking at a lot of these businesses and just, I mean, I think part of this is talking to these founders and talking to these operators. Like, is the problem the business or is the problem the person? Like, in general, what do you think?
Look, back to that example, we have yet to see a truly incredible business that's so poorly run, right? So it's a little. The reality is, it's a bit of both.
Of course.
There isn't.
But I'm not letting you say that. You have to say you. That answer. Of course, that's the answer. But
I will answer your question, which in reality it probably is the business. I think in general, like, again, 15 years, 16 years into the Shopify ecosystem, people have gotten sophisticated, right? Now there are a lot of people on their second or third. They were maybe at a Shopify, a DTC startup, and then they founded one. So the sophistication has definitely increased. And the reality is the underlying business probably just isn't awesome. And it's okay. It's an okay business. And you still need to believe quite a lot to grow it, which is why, like, when we buy a business, it's like, our base case is it's not growing anymore. And can we stabilize it, get it profitable, and create value that way, that, taking it from -2 in EBIT, stabilizing it at 1, and then it trades on, some EBIT basis.
Okay. So when you say it's an okay business, what does that mean? Describe an okay business as you understand that term.
Yeah, I would say, like, an okay, we'll just define it on EBIT percentage, right? Like, an okay business is like in the probably like 5 to 12% EBIT, like on a normalized basis. That's as far as we can get it, right? Like
5 to 25%, you said?
5 to 12%.
Okay, 5 to 12%. That makes sense. Yep.
Like, I would say a very good or an excellent business is that, like, kind of like 10 to 20, 25%. Like, that's a great business. Like, we don't really see businesses that we believe.
At what size?
Let's call it north of 10.
Okay, yeah, that's what I think too. Like, because if I think of, like, if I imagine like a $10 to $15 million business running at 20%, I think of that as a great business, even if it can't really grow that much, like, even if it's never going to make it to 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
But some people, that's still not a big enough thing for them to call it a great business,
Yeah. I maybe we'll call that a very good business. And if it's like nominally growing and it can still acquire customers, it's got enough of a growing audience, it becomes a great business. But yeah, we don't see many businesses with great or very good potential that are just run so poorly. We see, again, okay businesses that could be like marginally profitable, but have some structural issues. A lot of the time, It's because the way that they were capitalized. They wanted to be a high growth business, ended up with an okay, unprofitable business. And then it's our job to kind of take the okay part out without the high growth expectations.
And that makes sense to me. I think that's part of the reason why, in the is e-commerce a good business conversation, my mentality is like, it is partly but I think of it, I just don't have the level of ambition that some people do. So it's like, I don't know. I don't know if it's a good mechanism to get you to $100 million or whatever. Like, I don't really have much perspective on how that compares to the other opportunities to get to those levels. But anyway, that's what's interesting to me is like, you're describing businesses that you think are even distressed, that by some balance sheet cleanup and stuff like that are still sellable businesses because somebody wants them. I think that's interesting. Like, there's something there to me that is like, yeah.
I would say there definitely been other, like when we started doing this five and a half years ago, there really, like, we weren't coming across anyone. Now we're coming across in each process 4, 5, 6 other bidders. It's become much more common, which I think is just interesting.
Why do you think that is? I have theories immediately, but why do you think that is? Why are there more bidders for bad businesses?
I think that if you told the like adjacent e-commerce person that you could buy a $15 million revenue business for $1 million, and that had $1.5 million of inventory, they'd be like, "What a great business! I can definitely, like, that's a no-brainer."
Yeah.
And so I think that headline just kind of attracts people.
Yeah. Okay. And that, you think the people that's attracting maybe are not experienced with e-commerce then?
I think it's much harder than some of the new entrants think that it is.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. That makes sense. It's funny. It's almost like what happened was a few years back, we had the aggregator moment where it was like, raise a bunch of debt, grow businesses fast, build a big aggregator, or raise a bunch of equity, either way. Have that, and you're going to have shared services and all these other things, and it's going to create like a really big thing. And then that died, right? Thrasio died, and all of the smaller e-com aggregators died, and it just became the reality that like that wasn't going to work. And now it's like you're describing a new kind of theory there, which is like a bunch of people going like, ooh, we can buy distressed assets, almost like a new series of holding companies with a different thesis entirely. But to hear you describe it, maybe also not going to work out.
Yeah, not nearly the scale of Amazon aggregation, but I think there's definitely a crop of new holding companies looking to do this on a repeatable basis. I'll just go back to, because you and I love to joust about the quality of e-commerce as a business.
Yeah.
Back to the like $10 million business doing 20% in EBIT.
Yeah, that's rare. I mean, that's rare. Yeah.
And even let's say like 1.5. I agree that it is rare, but like if it's not growing,
yeah,
or even if it is growing, I think like I'm just now, again, 15 years into e-commerce myself, like increasingly questioning the sustainability or the half-life of that business. And look, most of the businesses we see, because we see a lot of venture-backed businesses, and venture-backed businesses typically go after big TAMs. Which means that they're not usually very niche businesses. They're in like big categories: apparel, pet food, etc.
Yeah, right.
Like, and those middle of the fairway, like those big categories, are so competitive. Where like if you told me that like I had the Ned Flanders like left-hand tool business,
the left Oreo,
that was doing 10 million and like 1 million in EBIT, I'd be like, that's a better business than like a $10 million apparel business. And I just think that it's so hard to stay relevant. Just another comment on kind of.
Yeah. I think another thing that doesn't come up very often in the conversation about like, is it good, is like, well, relative to what? Because like if I pull up like this chart, right, it's like, okay, 96% of businesses are less than $1 million. Just of all businesses out of 28 million firms, it's like, and I guess this is probably US, right? I haven't checked this math. Only 4% of businesses make it over $1 million in revenue. 0.4% make it to 10 million. It's like, well, yeah. I mean, what that tells you right away is that like all businesses are bad. Like it's like if you compare to the base rate, then it suddenly is like, well, what does it mean to be good, and like relative to what opportunities? Now, like this, of course, is like comparing an e-commerce apparel business to like a coffee shop, so like who knows which one is actual, but it's just I just think people, in the conversation, people don't do that. You don't compare it to anything. unless you're Taylor Holiday and you're just saying like start an agency, then you're comparing it to something. But like, but yeah, I think it's an interesting thing to think about, like whether or not it's a good opportunity. It's just like, again, relative to what I think. Now the cash intensiveness is its own question, but yeah, I don't know if you have a comment about that, but
Look, maybe this is like the anti-Shopify marketing, which is like everyone should start a store and like look at all these look at all these $500 million Shopify store owners, and like that could be you.
Yeah.
I just want kind of to add a different perspective.
The kind of e-commerce operator that likes this podcast episode, thinking carefully and critically about what leads to a profitable, successful e-commerce business, is the kind of operator that INTELLIGEMS was built for. INTELLIGEMS is split testing software for your e-commerce business, for your Shopify business. Super fast and easy to install. You can get started right away. Don't need an engineer to get it going on your site, all that good stuff. But what it does ultimately for your brand is allows you to split test needle moving elements of your Shopify store experience. That includes things not just like headlines and web design stuff, though that stuff it can certainly handle, but it'll allow you to split test things like price and the site-wide offer you offer a new customer, like 10% off when somebody gives you their email address for the first time, free shipping thresholds, free shipping charges, and most recently they've actually finally introduced a feature where you can actually test your checkout flow itself. So you can actually test those last steps in the process. Really, really cool. It's all very fast and easy. And critically, INTELLIGEMS ties into your cost of goods data in your Shopify store to give you its readout of whether or not your test is winning based not just the level of conversion rate or AOV, but actually profit net of your COGS, which is really awesome. So you can really know, is your test actually creating more profit? If you increase the discount, is the conversion rate trade-off worth it to generate more total profit or not? For example, that would be like a small example of this kind of thing. Really awesome software. It's nearly every one of my clients at this point is using, I think all of my full-time clients is using INTELLIGEMS to run these kinds of tests themselves. It's become a critical tool in their toolbox. Really, if you're trying to grow and you're trying to improve your website experience, improve the profitability of your brand, INTELLIGEMS is one of those tools that should be in your tool belt. INTELLIGEMS.io. Use the code FARIS20, FARIS20, to get 20% off your first 3 months. FARIS20, FARIS20, get 20% off your first 3 months with INTELLIGEMS. Do it now. I have two theories right now. I'm going to do one of them that's going to be about bad businesses, and one of them is going to be about good businesses. Okay, so here's my bad business theory. I have an increasing theory that for a subset of advertisers, or people building Shopify stores and running Facebook ads, particularly, that some of the behaviors present the way that gambling addiction presents. Which is like this thing where like you just have to keep putting in, and the next bet will cover your last ones basically, and then that will get you going. Do you know what I mean by that? Like that's like the classical gambling addict behavior is like you already have this debt, things are going that way, but you keep taking swings because you're like, well, if I can get this next one right, then it'll cover all my last ones, and then I won't make those mistakes again. That's the lie that you tell yourself, and it eventually makes you bankrupt, because you'll end up losing. But that's sort of the behavior that I feel like I see sometimes, where that describes some of what you have said, which is like you're spending money, the CAC becomes less efficient, you don't fire people when you should, you don't downsize when you should, because you're just like, we got to stay in it, the future will be brighter than the past, and then you start funding it with bad debt, and like that. That's what I mean. And I think even what made me think of that is like what you're saying about sort of Shopify's marketing or something, right? Where it's like, hey, look, this could be you. And it's the presentation of the picture of like the wealth that you'll get when you do this, and how great it'll be to own your own store, and, all of those kinds of things. Like, I don't know. Do you think that's overstating what's happening here to compare it to gambling addiction? Or do you think it follows that pattern?
It's certainly a very interesting perspective, very inflammatory. I hope that we don't get a cease and desist from Toby and Harley. But
yeah, I just mean when it goes wrong. Like I don't mean like necessarily that every business is that way, because like there's not a house in the same way. I mean, people say Zuck's the house or whatever, but I don't think so. That's the difference, is that like it actually is a money making proposition in a real way. But when it goes wrong, that's the behavior that I feel like I see.
Yeah, and I think that like, look, you default had to be an optimist to get into this, because you have to suspend some disbelief. And where I think it gets tricky is it's okay finding, you can be the cat with 9 lives, and you can find the second life, the third life, the fourth life, the fifth life. Once you start getting into the 10th life, the 11th life, the 12th life, that's where it becomes like you start making much more questionable decisions. That's where you get to a similar state that, you know, you referenced earlier about gambling, of like, you know, digging yourself into a deeper hole, and that's where you can create some really kind of really bad outcomes.
Yeah, I agree. Let's switch it. So surely you look at some good businesses. Uh,
Yeah, we do
occasionally.
see. Yeah, we do see some
Who
good
is
business.
who is doing well, like, and how are they doing well? When businesses are going well, what does it look like? We've described bad ones. What do good ones look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they just have the like opposite traits around ad efficiency and customer retention. You asked this question earlier, like, is it the operator or is it the business when it's on the downside? And I said it's the business, because I actually think the operator in the bad business and the operator in the good business aren't that far apart. They might be
Yeah,
like, you know, like a 6.8 operator versus and like, you know, 7.9 operator, you know, like, but
yeah,
it's not hugely different. And but for luck or some other, like, they've just picked a category with a product, with a price, with a brand message, that has really resonated. And then there are orders of magnitude to success, right? There's the $30 million business and there's a $300 million business. Like, we sometimes see a really, you know, a growing, profitable $30 million business and be like, wow, like, you've just really hit product market fit. You'll get really good ad efficiency. You've got a category with good built-in margins. Your customers keep coming back because they forget to unsubscribe, and like, it's just cheap enough that they don't care. And then they're looking at the $300 million business being like, oh man, we can't break through the frontier. Like, we can't spend enough. Ad efficiency drops off at each marginal dollar. That kind of funnel magic plus consumer sentiment plus TAM is like, that's the black box.
yeah. So my theory on this side of things is, right now, this is solidifying more for me, like, almost all the time, is that there are rocket ship brands that have insane growth velocity, but they're really few and far between, and their stories get blasted out really, really loudly. And that actually the way that brands really win is by having more reasonable growth expectations over a longer period of time. Put another way, get rich quick is really a scheme. It's not actually a viable way for people to grow, even though it does occasionally happen. And that what it really requires is sort of discipline and emphasis on major strategic and product level issues over a long period of time. And essentially, you have to reject the gambling addiction mentality, which is that, like, my next ad is the way that I blow up, and that I just need to, like, effort the ad account harder. Instead, it's like much more of efforting, like, product, customer, channel, like, you know, if there's like a, you know, potential for like adding Amazon or brick and mortar or whatever, these things that are big, large lifts that take a long time to do well. You know, if you sell into Costco, it's going to be really hard work to make that happen, you know? So, like, you got to focus on it and build it. If you add international, and that's a big part of your business, it's going to be really hard work, and you got to go do all this kind of stuff. It's not going to be quick. It's not going to be easy. So, brands that get that right and decide that that is how they're going to operate, and they're going to be disciplined about their OpEx as they grow, so they have a comfortable margin, and they're going to take bigger swings, and that's the way they get there. That's the actual path for most brands to build really, really good businesses. And people need to tune out the rocket ship stories, because they're all supplements anyway. So just get rid of that story in your mind, and just assume that that's, like, not the pathway to doing it. And that if you can do that, you can actually build a really good business. But you have to just, like, change your self-conception of what success looks like in the time period at which you get it. That's my sense of things right now. So what do you think?
I think that that's totally right. I think if you can put a B plus 7.5 out of 10, if they're better, great. But like a good operator who's financially disciplined in a seat, that's a half the battle.
Yeah.
But you still need the product to fly. And that's the
Yes.
thing
Yeah.
that, like, is really hard to predict. We were talking before, like, I had Hudson from Plant People come on and share a story on the pod, and they were like flat for a couple of years, really trying to figure it out. Then they doubled down on a single SKU. They did a bunch more customer research and kind of repositioned on this mushroom gummy, again, supplements, but like,
Yeah.
and in the last 18 months, the business has completely changed.
Yeah.
and I think like, something like 5x their business, doing it profitably. Incredible. Like, but
Product selection, customer research, like efforting those things in big ways over a long period of time.
yeah. And is he a better operator than he was 2 years ago? I don't know. Is he like top 1%? Like, I think
Yeah.
Hudson's a great operator, but like, and could he
Yeah.
recreate that from scratch? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think like one of the best testaments to this question is Sean Franks said many times publicly, like he could not recreate Rich.
Yeah. Right. Right.
I think right time, right place, right message, right price, and how far that product flies is really hard to predict.
Well, and the other thing that's very hard to evaluate in this is like this question of sort of like operator capacity. This is another thing I've been thinking about is like an example of this I always come back to is like watching what Zach Stuck has done with he's got a supplement brand, I think, or something like that he doesn't really talk about publicly as far as I can tell. And then Hollow Socks, which he talks about all the time. And he was posting his screenshots, and I don't know, I don't have Zach's P&L, but it's like in the many millions for a holiday for Hollow Socks, like there's a lot of revenue there, and assuming the screenshots are true, and again, I don't think he's lying. Like it's just like he's doing that at a good margin that makes sense. Well, it's like let's just take that story at face value. Like part of things, I just think Zach's better at it than most people, and I actually think it's a mistake. Like he's better at like the marketing side, efforting marketing funnels, like that side of things. He seems to me to be extremely good at it. And the mistake is to believe that I can be as good at it. Like the idea of a top 1% marketer by definition means I am probably not that. Right? Because like that's only 1 out of 100. 99 out of the 100 marketers are not that. And I certainly don't think of myself as like being in that super elite tier of those kinds of things. It's not the way that I want to try and do it. And so what you're describing with Hudson, I think, is actually in some ways like a better compliment. It's like you figure out how to do it without being like the elite of the Alex Hormozy funnel builder or whatever. It's like that I think there's something to that almost like everybody has to take a dose of humility so that when you read and see stories out there of who's going crazy, you go like, oh, well, I'm probably not as good as them. So I should have expectations that are lower than theirs,
I would say 2 things about Zach. And I want to be careful because I'm trying to convince him to come on my pod, and I haven't booked him yet. I think he is elite. And
Sean too, by the way, you mentioned him. I think he's like an elite operator. So sorry, go ahead.
And he's got 2 incredible businesses. And he has shared this. So I don't think I'm sharing any non-public, but it's 2 within a portfolio of I think 5 or 6. Right. Yeah, so his hit rate is, call it 300, 350, right? Yeah. And he is the top 1%.
Right.
So what happens if he was the founder and went all in on one of the other 4?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it is interesting. This is another way of thinking about it. Like, what about maybe part of this is that you just have to take a sort of venture mentality to it, which is like you just assume some of these are not going to work very well, but what you're trying to actually do is position yourself to get as many at-bats as possible, until you find the winning ones.
I think that's been one of my biggest realizations and takeaways. And if I would, have my time over again or give the advice, which is like really time box the PMF. And I know that goes against what like I just said about Hudson at Plant People. I'm going to have this other diaper business on the pod where, again, they were grinding for 4 years. Now they're mid 8 figures, and they just like all hit in the last 18 months. And again, it was like huge product evolution. But I would say like my general rule would be like, if it's not flying within 2 years, like you should be able to know within 2 years. Like if it's not flying within 2 years, just start again.
But that perspective can also apply to the level of products and brands. I think it is like essentially one of the ways brands can approach this mentality while not going and building a portfolio of brands is to say like, I'm going to take my brand, my one brand, and launch a bunch of different products within it and see if any of those show possibility. And then that becomes like your venture bets within the brand, basically. And I've watched this happen. Like I have a brand right now that's like launched into its like 4th very different category. And that 4th different category is going okay so far. Like there's like some signs they should keep investing there. And I think they probably should at least take 1, maybe 2 more rounds of investment into that category with some additional products within it. But I don't really care if it works because they have made the investment small. Their COGS are low enough to where they didn't have to like go outlay a ton of cash for it. And if it works, it will add 30 to 40% to the business, So it's like, it's just an outsized bet, like it's asymmetric bet, So, and I think there's something about that mentality with a lot of these businesses that people should figure out a way if you can keep your losses low enough on the losers and stay in the game long enough, then maybe you can take that kind of approach, whether it's in a brand or in a portfolio.
Yeah, I think that's a really good perspective, and certainly not one that I've thought about. It takes a lot of, frankly, it takes a lot of innovation, and it takes a lot of courage to be placing those bets within the brand, and a ton of work.
But I think at the product level, that's a better bet than just launching more ads for your one product. Like launching a new product is a better use of your time. But I think people get into the just make more Facebook ads,
Yeah. Well, it's you get the dopamine hit faster, right? Like the new product cycle, it could be 6 to 9 months.
Oh, it's so long.
And you're like, whoa, shoot, I need to make an MOQ, so it's going to be 50 to 100 grand, and I'm not going to get the feedback loop for 8 months.
Right.
Plus, I can get the feedback loop later today.
Yeah. 100%. Anything else you notice about the best businesses, Fan, before we sign off? I know we're running out of time.
What I think of when I think about your question is there are also just levels to the success.
Totally.
And there are $30 million businesses growing at 30%, that's reinvesting fully back into growth, that are break even. And then there are 30% businesses doing that and still ripping 15% margin. There are $100 million businesses that are doing 3% EBIT, and $100 million businesses doing 20% EBIT, right? And there's just so many levels to this.
Yep. All right. If people want your help with their distressed business, where should they go?
Fan of the Hedgehog Company.
Cool. That link is in the show notes in the description on YouTube. So go check that out. Man, you're one of my favorite people to talk to in the space. I would like to have 2 hours to have this conversation sometime and really stretch it out, talk more specific examples and all that stuff. Thanks for taking time.
Great to be back on, and look forward to next time.
All right. Thanks, man. Fan at thehedgehogcompany.com is the place to reach out to Fan. He just talked about it. The link for that is in the show notes, as I said. You should also follow up with Fan's content and podcast at inthemoneyhq.com. There's a bunch of different stuff that he's doing there. All kinds of great conversations with great operators from $5 to $50 million, basically, in revenue, and his podcast as well. So go check that out. If you're interested in following up with me, you can email me at podcast@ajfgrowth.com. I'm always super glad to have any feedback about episodes or ideas or questions. I'd love to do any Q&As, that kind of thing. And of course, you can find everything I'm doing at ajfgrowth.com. That's the place to find, if you want to work with me in AJF Growth, then you can go sign up there, tell me a little bit about your business, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. Thanks so much for watching or for listening. I'll see you next time.